was a little kid, I was very, very, very afraid of big dogs. Still to this day, I'm a little iffy. If your dog is barking at me, I'm going to look at you like, get your dog. That's not cool. Because when I was a kid, we were playing Frisbee one day outside, back in the day when kids actually played on the streets, in the cul-de-sacs. And a Frisbee went over my best friend's little fence. And one of our friends jumped over to go get it, and he was mauled by their two big dogs. So I saw this violent scene right in front of me, and it scared me from that moment on. So I had this fear and this hesitation towards big dogs, especially if they were aggressive. I remember one day I was out by myself. I don't know where my friends were at, but I was riding my bike outside by myself. And one of our neighbors had this big, dumb, golden retriever. Not the golden retrievers are dumb. This one was just dumb. And he's out in the front yard. I thought he was tied up. He wasn't tied up. And he sees this little piece of carne asada just cruising around. And he comes bolting at me, full speed. I'm like, he's not tied up. And I turn my bike and I pedal as fast as my little skinny legs could go. And it was straight out of the movie. This dog's dripping fangs were getting closer and closer to my back tire. And I look over, and right as he's about to bite my back tire, boom! I crashed head first into a parked van. And why is it that every time I share that, y'all laugh? You're supposed to laugh. You're supposed to, oh, poor baby Rudy. And I'm not talking about like the cool vans that we have nowadays, the soccer mom vans. I'm talking about a 1978 Ford Econoline van that was like flat in the front. It was a bus, basically. And even the dog stopped and he tilted his head. He's like, well, that was dumb. And I just pick up my bike and I run back in, and I was finally safe inside of my house. But let me ask you this question. Why did I crash that day? I was looking backwards. I wasn't looking in the right direction. I was looking at the problem, not in my direction. And see, we all know that we are to have our eyes fixed on the author and perfecter of our faith, who is Jesus. We know that we are to keep our eyes heavenward. We know that we're to keep our thoughts above. We know where our perspective is supposed to go, not on the enemy. It's not supposed to go on our problems. It's not supposed to be in the distractions that we face in life. No, that's not where our vision is supposed to be. We know this. But today I want to talk about a different kind of vision. Today I want to talk about a vision that goes beyond us. A vision to help the world see as we see. And there's a beautiful story found in Luke chapter 24 that I want to share a revelation that God gave to me. So if you have your Bibles, go with me to Luke chapter 24. I got a brand new Bible yesterday. And I'm only 34 years old, but I went for the giant print this time. And praise the Lord, I did that. I think I lost my Bible at the senior center somewhere. So somebody there has a beautiful calfskin Bible. So I got this new one here. But we're going to start in verse 25. El libro de Lucas, capítulo 24. Vamos a empezar en versículo 35. Spanish speakers, did I say that okay? Yeah? Yeah? I'm learning. Iffy? I'll get better. What I tried to say was, let's start in chapter 24, starting in verse 25. 25. This is the Resurrection Sunday. This is when Jesus raises from the grave, and he's now appearing to several of the disciples and several people around the area. Well, he comes to appear to two men who are walking on a 7-mile road to Emmaus, a city 7 miles outside of Jerusalem. And they don't yet recognize him at first, but something happens in which they do. And I'm reading out of the New American Standard, so if you have a mobile device, you may want to type in Luke 24:25 and a New American Standard. And it says, and he said to them, O foolish men, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. See, at this point, he was walking with these men, and they didn't realize it was him. And they're sad and discouraged because the Messiah was supposed to come and take over the place and with military power and save the Israelites. And instead, he was put on a criminal's cross. So they're discouraged. It's now the third day. His body's missing as they think. They have no idea what's going on. He tells them, are you slow to believe what the prophets have spoken? Was it not necessary, he says. Sorry, I went too far here. Was it not necessary? It's a new Bible. The pages stick together. It was not necessary for Christ to suffer these things and to enter his glory. And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them the things concerning himself and all the scriptures. Wouldn't you love to hear that sermon? Where Jesus, from the beginning of the Bible to the end of that time, explained who he was through all the scriptures. I want that DVD when I get to heaven. Verse 28, and he approached the village and where they were going, and he acted as though he was going further, but he urged them, saying, stay with us, for it is getting toward evening, and the day is now nearly over. So he went in to stay with them, and he had reclined at the table with them. He took the bread and blessed it and breaking it. Remember when Jesus multiplied the loaves and the fishes? It says that he broke the bread and he raised his eyes to heaven, giving thanks to God before the miracle happened. So they're recognizing something here. So he reclined at the table, which is very intimate. He took the bread and blessed it, and breaking it, he began giving it to them. Then their eyes were opened and recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. So now Jesus is playing games. First they don't know it's him. The second they realize it's him, he's like, he's gone. Beat me up, Scotty, I'm out of here. And he disappeared from their sight. And they said to one another, were not our hearts burning within us while he was speaking to us on the road, while he was explaining the scriptures to us? And they got up that very hour and returned to Jerusalem another 7 miles back, and found gathered together with the 11 those who were with them, saying, the Lord has really risen, and he appeared to Simon, and began to relate the experiences on the road and how they recognized him by the breaking of the bread. Now this is incredible. Here you have Jesus, who is there in the flesh. Jesus is there in the flesh. He has the scars, as we see later on in the scripture. They know that that's Jesus. They've been with him for 3.5 years. They should recognize him. But the problems that surrounded them and the discouragement that was in their hearts kept them from recognizing that this was actually Jesus. But then he takes it a step further. And it says that he explained through all the scriptures who he was. They got the best Bible lesson in history by Jesus himself, and they still didn't recognize him. So what was it that finally broke the bread, so to say? What was it that finally allowed their eyes to be opened? It was the breaking of the bread. See, they recognized that Jesus was now Jesus because he was doing what Jesus always did. They saw that it wasn't just his words. They saw that it wasn't just his flesh. They saw more. They remembered the feeling. They remembered the glory of being intimate with him in a meal and seeing him break the bread and seeing the Holy Communion. They remembered these things. And now their eyes were open and boom, he's gone from their sight. And I bring that up because as Pastor Matt and I have been talking over the last few weeks, we've been looking at the stats that have been around in our society here. Within a 5-mile radius of this church, there are about 200,000 people who are not connected to a church. That's 73% of the population does not know God on a very intimate level. The harvest is ripe. And here we stand as people who get to put his love and power on display for those who are all around us. But see, they see our churches. They see our crosses. They see our cute little t-shirts and our bumper stickers and our mugs that have cool catchphrases on them. They see our hashtags on Instagram. But they're not here yet because their eyes haven't been open to the intimacy that we have in the Father. And that's the responsibility that we have. The responsibility that we have to put his love on display. We are called to represent or represent God in this place. See, if Jesus, if the same power that was in Christ is in us, and if Jesus was the physical manifestation of the Father on earth, and we're made in his image, then we have the responsibility to give the world an example of who he is. Amen. To give the world an encounter with God. Amen. But see, some of us are a little bit afraid. We have fears, we have insecurities, we have different things that may pull us back from wanting to fully be who we are and be lights in this world. But we have that calling. You know, we celebrated the 500-year anniversary of the Great Reformation. Martin Luther hammered those theses on the door. And in that Reformation, 3 powerful things happened. The first was that we realized that the Bible is our sole authority. And that wasn't how it was before. We realized that you get saved by faith alone, only faith. Not by your works. You can't earn your way into heaven. But there was a third thing that got forgotten in all those theses. And the third thing was that every member can minister. Every member minister. That means you have the ability to be salt and light in this world. You have the ability to share the good news with those who are around you. You have the ability to pray for the sick and to pray for the lost. You have the ability in your way, the way God designed you, exactly as you are, to be a light into this community. Amen. And some people, again, may be afraid of that, but I say if you have a story and if you have a smile, you've got a ministry. You really do. Sure. Some don't know, but I am a bivocational pastor, so I have a day job Monday through Friday. I'm a maintenance person and a custodian. So I keep places clean and keep things working well. And every day I dump out a bunch of bins of trash, and there's always the other employees from the other company who gather by the dumpsters for their smoke break. And there's an older lady there named Candace. And Candace and I are always talking about God with their big old cigarette. And the way it started one day was I came and I was dumping trash, and she says, "Hey, brother." That's how she talks. It's kind of cool. She said, "Hey, brother, Yo, we smiling. Right on. And I said, amen, God is good. God is good. And then, oh my Lord, she done opened up and we had this huge conversation about life and about God. Why? Because I smile. That's it. I'm telling you, if you have a story and a smile, you can minister. You have a ministry by simply giving something away. We can't allow ourselves to be shut down by our fear and our insecurities. And you know what? We're in great company because there were lots of people in the Bible who were fearful and had insecurities. I'm talking Moses. I'm talking about Jesus' own disciples. And so today I want to share with you some encouragement that the Lord has given to me. And if you're taking notes, write down these two questions. Number one, what's in your hand? And what's in your heart? What's in your hand and what's in your heart? What's in your hand? There's a founder of the Salvation Army. His name was William Booth. Many of you guys may know that history and that organization. And one day there was an accident and William Booth actually lost his sight. He lost his sight. And his son had to bring him the bad news that the doctors didn't believe that he would regain his sight. So he comes up to his father and he says, Father, I'm so sorry, but the doctors are saying you may not recover your eyesight. And the father looks at his son, he says, so you tell me that I'll never see you again. He says, not in this lifetime, but possibly in the next. He takes a second, he soaks it in, he says, well, all my life I've served God with everything with my eyesight. Now I will serve God with my everything without my eyes. And it just goes to show that it doesn't matter what talents we have or no talents we have. It doesn't matter what education we have or we don't have. If you have a smile, you have a story, and you have a heart that can say yes to God, it's amazing what he can do through you and for you. Amen. Sometimes it's what disqualifies us that actually qualifies us. Amen. In the life and in this ministry. Right. Sometimes us saying, I can't do it, this is impossible, and God's like, finally, now I can do the work. Now I can do my power. Now I can lead with my favor because you stepped aside, allow me to move, and you can just follow my every step along the way. Sometimes what disqualifies us actually qualifies us. All we need to do is bring our yes to God and our service, and the God of all this universe will be with us. Amen. And the amazing thing is, he wants you just to be you. Amen. He wants you in your own creative way, how you dress, your talents, your conversational status, all that, exactly as you are, is how he wants to use you. In Exodus chapter 4, we see the story of Moses, who had run away from Egypt. Moses tried to save the Israelites. He ended up murdering somebody. Didn't work out too well for him. But when he allowed God to do it, 2.5 million slaves were free. And as he ran away, he was in the wilderness for 40 years, shepherding and just being out there, simple married life. We know the burning bush, and God called him. He says, you're going to go back to that place, and you're going to lead my children out of there. And he began to give him all these excuses, all these reasons why he couldn't do it. I stuttered, I'm not smart enough, I ran away, I killed somebody, remember that one, God? All these things why I can't do it. And I love in chapter 4 of Exodus, God simply says, Moses, what is in your hand? What is in your hand? And that's like an obvious question. You love how God asks you obvious questions? Like, what's in your hand? Like, you created the universe. Why are you asking me such a simple question? You can see this. But he wanted Moses to recognize something, that staff was a mistake. He wasn't called to be a shepherd. He was called to be a deliverer. And he had this staff, which was a symbol of his income. It was a symbol of his influence. It was a symbol of his mistake. That he ran away from what God called him to do. And God said, I'm even going to use your mistake. I'm even going to use what the enemy meant for evil and turn it around for my good. And he called him to throw down that staff, and it became a snake. Because he said, what if they don't believe me? So he threw it down, it became a snake. Then he said, grab it by the tail. How many have to know that it's definitely God telling you to touch a snake before you touch a snake? And I may be the only one in the room, but I would love to have that party magic trick up my sleeve. To have a stick and be like, bam, snake. Ooh, you know? Or if people were messing with me. You know how fun that would be? Like, oh, you want to make fun of me? Yeah, snakes, yeah. I know. Why are you running? Why are you running? But Moses was smarter and more responsible than I was. And he picks it up, and God says, I can even use your mistakes and make you do something phenomenal. It was that staff that split an ocean. It was that staff that struck a rock and water came out. It was that staff that led the way for 2.5 million people to go towards their destiny. Amen. As I mentioned last week, Joyce Meyer says that you will be the most happiest in your entire life when you serve other people. Right. But think about how even more overjoyed you will be when you serve other people in the natural way that God wired you. Even with your failures, even with your past, even with your mistakes, God can do something powerful through you if you simply say, God, this is what's in my hand. This is what I have. Do you know what's in my hand? My hand is teaching. My hand is loving people. That's what God put me on this planet to do. I had a friend one time tell me, he says, do you realize that you preach when you just talk in a conversation? We can just be talking over coffee, and I'm like, and then bullet point number 1, and he's like, you preach when you talk, and it's in me. I don't play instruments, I'm not good at sports, I can't fix a car, but I will teach your socks off. Because that's what's in my hand. What's in your hand, use it to the greatest ability. And then the next thing is what's in your heart. What's in your heart? What is your passion? What are your dreams? These are the things we can't run away from, but run to despite the risk. I was listening to a podcast, and there was a real big pastor in LA, and now his son is coming under his ministry as well. And this father-son ministry duo are not only leading multiple campuses in LA, but they're traveling the world with this ministry. And one time they went to Norway. So here you got these California boys who are going to Norway in December. Like in the coldest time, well, I don't know if that was their winter, but it was cold. It's way up there. It's like the North Pole status. And so they're up there, and they're ministering, and they're traveling, and they're also taking time to shop and to kind of sightsee and do some things they haven't done before. One of the things that they hadn't done before was go hunting. You can imagine fashionable people from LA aren't necessarily going out into the woods and hunting. But they went hunting, and it was below 0 that day. And the son went with one of the pastors, and they went at nighttime, because that was the best time to catch whatever it is that's in Norway, whatever it is that they're hunting. And so they're out there in -degree weather, and they're frozen. Well, at least he's frozen to the core. And after 2 hours goes by, he finally says to the pastor, look, I'm freezing, I'm so bored, we haven't seen anything, can we go back home? And the pastor starts laughing. And he says, we stay out here all night until we get what we want. He says, I don't understand how you can love hunting that much. And he says, well, you don't realize that we're not out here for sport. We're out here to eat. Wow. The hunt is for our food. So you have this son who's out there hunting for the experience. He doesn't care if he catches anything. But you have another person who's out there hunting because his life depends on it. Now, your dream and what's in your heart, is it something that you're looking at that's just what I want to try to do in life? Or is there something like these two who are walking with Jesus that burns in your heart that you have to do? So that's why I'm only asking you, what can you do with what you have? But he's asking you, what are you dreaming about? What can you believe me for? What can I walk with you hand in hand? But sometimes the trials of life, sometimes the distractions that we have can keep us away from our dreams. Sometimes we go after our dreams and it doesn't work out, and we revert back and say, well, that was painful, that didn't go as planned, I'm not going to do that one again. Failure is not failure. Failure is just, I tried it, it didn't work, so I got to think of something else to do. God, I got to believe you, and maybe I missed the mark on that one. But circumstances can try to block us from it, but we can't give up. Remember the story, and this is what Elizabeth was saying this morning in the worship time. In Matthew, where it talks about the littleness of faith that the disciples had. They tried to cast out this demon that was terrorizing this little boy, and they couldn't do it. They tried and they tried and they tried and they couldn't do it. Finally, Jesus comes around and is like, oh, how long must I put up with you? And he casts it out just like that. And the disciples are like, we're with you. We've done this before. Jesus, explain to us why this didn't work. How come this didn't happen? We tried. We did everything right. We couldn't get the manifestation to get out. Why? And Jesus says, because of the littleness of your faith. That if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could tell this mountain to move and it would obey you. The littleness of your faith. It's very important to understand what the word little means in the Greek, because it doesn't necessarily mean little. One definition says brief. That's pretty interesting when you think about it. Here I am, it's not necessarily about, because we all have a measure of faith according to Romans. But it's not about how powerful or not powerful I am. It's not about how much I know or I don't know. It's about, can I endure with the passion that's in my heart? It said brief. The littleness, the briefness of your faith. You tried it, you gave up. What if you kept pressing in despite what was happening? What if the disciples continued to press in and continue to press in and continue to press in? They might have seen the manifestation. And say, I believe that our experiences determine our expression. And we can allow our failures and our mistakes to determine how we respond and we react in this life. Or we can write a new story. And we can trust God for a new journey to create new moments and new testimonies that rewrite the story of our heart to say, God, I'm going to keep in enduring faith pressing on to what you have put in my heart, because the world is literally dying for our story. The world is literally perishing unless we bring them the message of hope and the message of love. And I'll finish with this. When I was in my senior year of high school, we just graduated, and I got a full-time job working at Napa Auto Parts. Again, I don't know anything about cars, so it was a pretty scary world, but I drove a forklift, I stocked shelves, I put a bunch of stuff away, and I worked with one of my best friends and a couple other people who went to my church at that time. It was fun hanging out with my buddies, but then we got a new worker, and I forgot her name, but I remember she was a Marine wife. And we developed, this relationship, this friendship with all of us, and a couple months down the road, she found out that we all go to church, and she goes, oh, you guys do that church thing. And I said, yeah. And I'm just 18 years old. I grew up in the church. I had never met an atheist in all my life. And she goes, well, I don't believe in God. I says, I had this look like, are you human? What's wrong? I never met somebody who was opposed to God. Never met somebody who was an atheist. And I was so stunned, I didn't realize that I was being rude, but I said, wait a minute, so you're telling me that you don't believe that there's a God who created this world? She goes, no. You're telling me you don't believe that Jesus can send you to heaven? You don't even believe in heaven? She goes, no. I'm like, so you're telling me that you just lived a couple of decades on this planet, you're working a minimum wage job, and you don't get along with your husband, and you're just going to tolerate life and then one day cease to exist? And she goes, yeah. I said, that's depressing. Yeah, I have no filter. I said, that's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. And she just looked at me, she says, yeah, it is. And went back to work. And I so wish that, 18 years ago or something like that, I had the knowledge that I have today, the experience I have today, to just smile and share my story, perhaps to pray for her and see her physically feel something, to see her physically get well and see something supernatural that defies her logic. I missed an opportunity there, and I pray for her almost every year. God brings that story back to me almost every year, and I so hope and pray that in almost the last 2 decades that she found a way to know the love of God.
Amen.
Dad grew up in this city. 34 years old, I grew up here. I was here when my house was shot up by gang members. I was here when I saw my neighbor pass away because he had a heroin addiction and he overdosed, and to watch as the paramedics pumped his chest but nothing happened. I'm here when I see the crazies walk in the streets. And we got to stop letting it be an us and them. It now has to be a we.
Amen.
It's no longer the homeless people. That's my homeless person. You leave my bum alone. This is our city. And we don't have to be superheroes. We don't have to be God. We simply have to be people who are surrendered, who can say yes.
Amen.
And with a smile and a story, I believe that the world can see the goodness of God.
Amen.
Amen.